We would like to begin this transmission by titling it A Game of Chess. Now, we have talked about the idea of different levels of consciousness that are relevant for your experience in physical reality, beginning with the idea of the Oversoul, which has extensions that would create individuated souls, or spirits if you wish, which then, in order to experience physical reality, creates a specific extension of itself, a specific aspect of itself, a specific presentation of itself, called the higher mind, that will become half, in a sense, of the person that will experience the idea of physical reality. The higher mind, in thus then choosing particular themes to experience, particular challenges to transform in that physical reality, in creating that so-called destiny for the physical mind to follow, that hallway, that pathway that the physical mind will take, even though the physical mind will have its own free will as to how to walk that path, the higher mind's choosing, in a sense, the soul's choosing through the higher mind of the particular experience it wishes to have, creates the kind of path or destiny that the physical mind will experience. In order for the physical mind to experience that path, that theme of exploration, the higher mind will then, by using what is called the template level reality, the blueprint level that is used to create the outlines of the physical reality experience, if you wish, the draft of the experience. It uses that template level to create the playing field that the physical mind will play in. And from there creates and steps part of itself down into the vibration of the collective mind, which contains the collective agreements of the physical reality that is being experienced by the physical mind, and then the individual agreement level that determines the agreement that the individual has with the collective in playing out its scenario. And thus then down into the components of the physical mind itself, the belief systems, the emotions, the thoughts, that together create the behaviors that are representative of the physical persona, the physical personality, that becomes the other half of the whole person, being constructed of the physical mind and the higher mind, with all these intervening layers creating the playing field and the individual and collective agreements that the physical mind will use to explore the theme that the higher mind has chosen. Now, knowing that that is the basic structure, from oversoul to individual soul to higher mind to template level reality to collective agreement to individual agreement, and down into the physical personality levels, you will find that there is an analogy that can be made by using the game of chess, or perhaps many different kinds of games, but for the purposes of this communication, chess may be the most apt analogy, and we will use that. You can, in a sense, look at, thus then, from this analogy of chess, that the oversoul is the level of your consciousness that plays many different games at once. Not only a multitude of chess games, but a multitude of other kinds of games as well. Each game being representative of a life experience, an incarnation, a projection of the oversoul into some sort of reality where it is playing out some sort of theme and exploratory path. So the oversoul plays a multitude of games all at once. But each of those multitudes, each of those individuated games is thus then, shall we say, the purview, the domain of an individual aspect of the oversoul, the individualized soul that is focused on one idea, one particular style of game. In this case, by our analogy, a game of chess. Now, the higher mind, thus then, is created to be, in a sense, the game player, to strategize, to understand the playing field, to have the broad view, as it were, of the game. And thus then, in continuing this analogy, the higher mind uses the template level reality, the blueprint level, to create the game board. What you are familiar with, in a sense, again, by analogy, as the chess board, with its 64 squares of alternating color. Thus, once laying out the board, it thus then allows itself to project into the level of the collective agreement. The level of the collective agreement consciousness thus then defines the rules in general of the game, of the overall game. So once the template level has been used to create the playing board, the collective is used to create the idea of what rules are germane for the playing of this game. What reality game are we playing here? What is appropriate and relevant for this particular game we are going to experience, and what is not relevant for that particular game? That is decided upon in the collective agreement consciousness. Such examples, such simplistic examples of the collective agreement rules for this game in your physical reality are such things as, generally speaking, most of you will experience the concept you call gravity. You will experience the concept you call space and time. As a physical being, you will experience the concept of needing and requiring the idea of sleep, the idea of food, the idea of water, and so on and so forth, in order to perpetuate your ability to continue to play the game. Now, sometimes those rules can be bent a little bit, but generally speaking, the overall collective agreement rules will be abided by most people playing this game, because it allows you the opportunity to simply put something on automatic, to put the rules on automatic, so you don't have to think about them constantly and constantly consciously create them in order to play the game. This gives you the opportunity to actually simply focus on playing the game instead of constantly wondering exactly what the parameters are, what the rules are. So once you learn the rules, once you instill the rules within you, in an automatic sort of second nature way, then you can simply be on about learning to play the game better and better, more precisely, more clearly. Now, once the collective rules of the game have been created in the collective mind level of consciousness, it is time to define the idea of exactly what piece you are going to be, and thus then in the individual agreements, the individual agreement level, you will create the rules for that piece. How does that piece move? What is its position on the board? How does it relate to the other pieces? This thus then is created for the individual on that level of the why and wherefore, the concept of what you are as a playing piece, what skills, talents, abilities that you have to give to the game. Your ability to view your relationship to other playing pieces is created in this individual agreement level as it relates to the collective agreement, so that you will understand exactly how you fit in the game, where you belong in the game, how it is you will move in the game, so that you can take full advantage. By learning your style of movement, take full advantage of the strategy of the piece that you are being, and make sure that your movements are impactful and effective in creating the experience of the game that has been, in that sense, laid out for you by the higher mind and the board and the collective rules. Again, not that the piece doesn't have individual will, but it's going to use its individual will to best express, best exemplify the capabilities it has been designed to have as the individual playing piece. And so it will know its own rules, who it is, what it is, its own identity. And that's why it's very important to get in touch with the idea of, in a very clear way, who and what each individual is, to know their identity, to know what they are all about, to know what path they are on. Thus then clearly, Knowing that will allow each individual piece to interact with every other individual piece in a way that allows the game to be played in the most fun way, in the most challenging way, in the most strategic way, in the most impactful way, in the most expanding way, in the most satisfying way. Because it is about the relationship of all the pieces to each other that allow the game to be what it is, and allows for different opportunities for each piece to play different strategies in every single game that it plays within the game, every single opportunity that it acts on, every single path of excitement that it follows, every single door that it walks through. Thus, then, again, once this has been determined of what the game board is, what the general rules are, what the individual rules are for the piece, now the physical personality is created, which is analogous to the actual piece itself. Thus, you find that the qualities of the physical playing piece, the physical qualities, the shape, and so on and so forth, the material it is made out of, the size, and so on, correspond in the idea to the physical personality and the physical body. And thus those qualities are also, to some degree, part and parcel of the game. And thus, by knowing the shape can be handled properly. It can be moved properly, in the proper way, smoothly throughout the game. It can be moved with finesse. And in the idea of the beliefs and the emotions, the thought patterns that together form the physical personality, the behavior of that piece, thus then is the complete chess game revealed. And then, once all those components are in place, you can play the game in the most efficient way possible. Once you have really learned the rules, taken them to heart, once you know who you are, taken that to heart, once you understand the piece that you have become, that you have extended yourself as into the physical reality game, once you understand the layout of the board and all these things and your relationship to the other pieces, then you can play the game in a very efficient, very fun way, very expanding way. And you can learn from every move you make and from every response you get how to play the game better and better and better, more efficiently, more smoothly, more broadly. Now, there are, of course, many different kinds of chess, in a sense, in many different parallel realities. Even in your own parallel reality, not only do you have the idea of two-dimensional chess on a flat board, but many people on your planet actually play three-dimensional chess on a multitude of levels. There are even parallel realities, and yours will be one of them eventually, that has learned to play the idea of fourth-dimensional chess, where time is actually a factor in the game as well, in terms of exactly not only where a piece winds up, but exactly when it winds up in that position, being also important to the playing of the game. So you are learning more and more levels on which to play this game of chess, more and more levels on which to play the game of life, to play your life out, incorporating a broader understanding and a higher capability of seeing different moves before you make them. In a sense, when you talk about the idea of chess masters, looking ahead, 5 moves ahead, 7 moves ahead, 10 moves ahead, and understanding for both players what those moves could all be, what the probabilities are, all the possible combinations of what moves could be made ahead of moves that have been made. This is really nothing more than extending your senses into all the different parallel reality versions of that game, being capable of seeing them overlap in such a manner as to guide yourself through the parallel reality game stream that represents the one in which your player, so to speak, wins the game. This takes practice, of course, takes the ability to open up to the idea of being able to perceive parallel realities in a variety of ways. And again, this is analogous to some of what you are doing in your physical reality now by becoming, first of all, aware that there are, of course, such things as parallel realities, parallel games going on that perhaps other versions of you are playing. And thus knowing that since everything exists in the now, you have the ability to cross-connect to many of these other incarnations and become aware of the interconnected energy and information that can be downloaded from these other games going on in ways that, by observing the moves in some of these parallel reality chess games and games of life, you can apply some of these moves to your own game and thus shift yourself to one of those parallel realities, become the player, become the focus of the player in that parallel reality that is more and more indicative, more and more representative, if you will, of the game that you prefer to play. Now, many people on your planet become enamored, become fixated and focused on the idea of knowing about all these other parallel incarnations, parallel realities. And the idea is that it's all well and good to know about them, but to a certain point. Because once you allow yourself to understand how to download that information in the most efficient and relevant way, you will realize that you really only need a little bit of information here and a little bit of information there, just exactly when you need it to help you with the next move that you're going to make on the game board. You don't really need all the information at once. You don't really necessarily need to connect to every single parallel reality version of the game at once, or even ever. The idea would be that if you are playing one game of chess, and you have developed some capability to look several moves ahead, in other words, to examine a number of parallel reality versions of the game all at once, and you have decided on what course to shift to that is representative of the game you prefer to play, that's all well and good. But if you take it a little bit too far for its own sake, just for the sake of being aware of other versions of the game that may not necessarily be relevant to the game that you really truly need to play, that you really truly prefer to play, then you will simply clutter up the game board to such an extent that you won't have any capability of making any moves at all. So the idea is to keep it simple, keep it streamlined, keep it efficient, and only allow yourself to know that what is necessary is all you really need to know at any given moment, even as you extend your senses into a variety of parallel games. Allow the synchronicity in your life, allow the way in which the game unfolds naturally to show you, to demonstrate to you exactly how many moves ahead you really need to see, how many different versions of the game you really need to be aware of at any given moment. Let it fall into place automatically, naturally, in such a manner as to be representative and reflective of the game that is truly your game. Because when you are truly playing your game, then you will find that the outcome of that game will always be satisfactory for you, regardless of who else you may be playing with. Because as these things go, even though different people may be playing on the same game board and each playing their own game, you're not really playing against each other. You are playing your own game, and in some senses with each other, but each of you actually has the capacity to win your own game at the same time.
Hi, Bashar. This is Marcus from Norway. I have a question about a theory that I developed 3 years ago, which relates to the ideas of ships and physics. If we were to put a consciousness at the center of a ship and then facilitate the development of the ship and its technology to properly reflect what a consciousness does most naturally, which is to go into a state of flow, then developing the different modules of every module of the ship according to that knowledge, would that cause the ship to go into a state of flow? And if so, would that cause the ship to pass the upper third density threshold and therefore go faster than the speed of light? Thank you. We love you. Avail.
Yes, depending upon the material that you're working with. It's not going to happen for all materials. This is, in a sense, what happens with the ships that we use, is that they are crystallized versions of our higher minds. So, yes, what you're saying is true, and it raises the vibration above and beyond the threshold of physical reality when it is imprinted with that vibration and unlocked from any particular physical universe. It allows it to shift and reduce the idea of distance to nothing. So, yes, in general, you are correct, but only for certain kinds of technological materials and substances that would allow that to happen. Your physical world doesn't have those substances quite yet.
Greetings, Bashar. I suffer from aphantasia, the inability to visualize. I'm always in darkness. I can't see anything since I was about 8 years old. I went to a Dolores Cannon session, and there was someone with me named Abel. That was his joke, short for ability. And it was taken away from me so that I can send up all this information in its purest form, not boxed up. But the problem is I'm sad about that because I can't picture anything, faces, people, places. Everything's new for me every day, and I embrace that. But my concern is that going to hinder me at all from reaching a higher frequency, a higher elevation? Because I want that. I need that. So if you could guide me in my journey, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Aphantasia will not hinder you one little bit. You just have to use your imagination to create the images that you feel are necessary in a different way. Maybe learn to draw them, or create a collection of pictures that you can look at physically in your world, which will be perfectly fine substitutes for the idea of not necessarily holding them in your imagination or your mind. So be creative with the idea of how to create pictures that represent what you need them to represent in whatever way, shape, or form your creativity and imagination so desires. Take advantage of what's available to you in your physical reality to replace that system with something physical. It will not inhibit you one bit from